Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. And today I welcome Anthony Abbagnano to the show, where we're going to be talking about the power of breath and the transformative power that can give to many of us. So just a quick introduction to Anthony, and I'm going to dive into the conversation. So Anthony is the founder of Alchemy of Breath, a globally recognized breathwork community that has helped thousands reclaim their power through the transformative power of the breath. His personal story, shared in this book, details how he overcame profound challenges through breathwork and mindfulness, leading him to create a life of purpose and balance. So welcome to the show today, Anthony. One of my favorite subjects is breathwork, and it's made a massive difference in me, my mental health. So I'm really looking forward to what you're going to share with us today. So yeah, it'd be interesting, first of all, to hear how it made a profound change in your life. Like, how did you stumble across breathwork originally?
Okay, just to see this 8-year-old kid, half Italian, at a very stuffy boarding school in England. He wasn't very popular because back in the 60s, 1960s, 1961, it wasn't done to be half Italian in England. And so he was unhappy at school. He didn't know what happened to his family, where he was. And then a kid comes up to him and gives him a paper bag and says, breathe into that. And so he does, he breathes into that paper bag, and then the older boy then takes him from behind and squeezes his arms around his chest and says, now exhale one last time. And so this little boy exhales and he gets put down on the ground gently and has probably the most spiritual experience of his life so far at that point. And for all the unhappiness that I felt as a youngster, having that experience changed everything. I mean, the whole perspective of life changed from being an unhappy life to understanding that actually there's a much greater power than what I'm experiencing right now. It really did put things into proportion. And ever since then, the breath to me has been my mentor, my best friend. It's been the most reliable best friend I could have ever had. And so I ended up teaching about breath work and opening an academy to teach teachers about breath work because I needed to remember myself
Mm.
to stay close.
Oh wow. That's sounds like a massive experience when so that guy was just holding you while you breathed in the paper bag, did you say?
He let me breathe into it, just big breaths, and then he squeezed me from behind. There was
Yeah.
something about squeezing all the air out and then letting me down to the ground. And yeah, I think that was when things got reordered for me. I understood that there was a higher power. Of course, like I remember, I started boarding school when I was 7, and we used to go to church every day and get told what God was and God is within you and all of these things. I could never really understand what that meant. It
Mm.
sounded quite abstract to me, and but really to have had this experience was a deeply spiritual experience that didn't come through the mouths of lesser beings. It was just like a direct download of like, oh my God. I was like, I saw stars, I saw answers and questions as the same thing. I saw infinity. I felt complete oneness. I just felt complete comfort and being reminded, being
Wow.
reminded of what's real and what's not. And for some reason, I'd felt that the life I was living, which I used to cry myself to sleep every night and I'd get teased about that. It was grim as a kid in England if you went to boarding school. And all of that just like seemed like nothing in comparison to the breadth and the magnificence of this experience. It was
Mm.
so powerful.
Mm. So you experienced something like it sounds like a lot wider than perhaps your mind could see at that point.
Yeah, and I think just in that, what that means is it showed me how limited the mind really is too. So
Mm,
there's so much beyond what we can think.
mm. What else is out there? What else? What other, like with the breath? Is there? You mentioned about like mind. I mentioned about like mindfulness and that you've been looking into that. Is for you the main source of mindfulness for you through the power of the breath, or is there something else you do for that mindfulness?
Well, I think first of all, how did we end up calling it mindfulness? Because
Mm.
it seems like the mind is full of shit, really. Um, so, do we really want a mind that's full of that, or and why is it in meditation that we associate meditation with mindfulness, but meditation is really about emptying the mind? So, I'm curious about this term. I question the way we associate with this term mindfulness to begin with. But if we're going to assume that it means presence, being present, then let's run with that. Because to me, being present is actually being with a mind that's still, not a mind that's full. So it's not really about movement or processing power. It's about letting go of all of the things that we thought make us better, letting go of all the stories that we tell ourselves, and sitting here right now with this. And that is okay, with that being okay. So, all of those cliches that we hear, like no matter where you go, you'll find yourself, point towards actually, there's no point going anywhere. Just stay right here, right now, and stop wanting what you haven't got. And those are some of the most fundamental steps towards being fully present and fully here. And so the breath helps with that, because I don't think you can breathe and not be present. You if you give your attention to your breath, you're giving your attention to the flow of life.
Mm.
And if you're doing that, then it empowers you to feel all the rainbow of human emotion, the disasters, the wonderful things, everything, but also stay present with your breath. So, in a sense, you're empowered to be the witness of your experience, not just the victim or the perpetrator of your experience. You can actually step back and observe your human experience and get more of an overview and more sense of proportion.
Mm. Yeah, the breath is the flow of life, like what you said there.
Yeah.
Connecting to that,
Yeah.
witnessing life. Love that. So yeah, like there's quite a lot of breathwork's kind of over the recent years become more known, and there's quite a lot of breathwork out there. If you look,
Mm.
there's like the Wim Hof stuff, and then there's
Yeah.
somatic breathwork. So yeah, tell us a little bit about like your style of breathwork that you're teaching. Has it got a particular like stance or particular name?
Well, it's called alchemy,
Hmm.
alchemy of breath. Quite accidentally, I founded a restaurant in Ubud in Bali 18 years ago called Alchemy. And so I thought, well, I'll call it Alchemy of Breath. But, you
Like it.
know, actually, alchemy is to me the perfect word for what exists when you breathe and give your consciousness to it. Those two ingredients can create something quite extraordinary, um, and quantum. So to me, the word is appropriate, and I actually feel like alchemy of breath is more of a belief system than a brand, even though of course it is the brand we use. And I'm reluctant to put a breath style under my own name. I don't think the breath belongs to any of us. It doesn't even belong. We're not even given our breath. We call it my breath, but every single breath we're lent, right? We've got to give it back again.
Mm,
Um, so there's something very humbling about this alchemy that is in our breath for me. It keeps me very small and curious. And I feel like after a lifetime, over 60 years of exploring the breath, I feel like I know a tiny, tiny amount of what it really can do and how powerful it is. So I'm a devoted student. I'm also a teacher, but that's really the result of being an avid student.
Mm. Teaching to learn. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly.
I remember reading in James Nestor's book Breathe, and when I started reading that, it's like there's many different foods out there as there ways to breathe and things like that, which I thought was
Yeah,
fascinating. I thought, wow,
yeah,
so many different ways.
yeah. I often say I think one breath is merits a lifetime of study, and I don't think we'd be complete. So when you think
Mm,
about how many breaths we take in a day, what is it, 25,000 a day or something like that? Um, it's just such an infinite source of mystery and discovery. Perhaps not so infinite. Yeah, actually, I would even say infinite in terms of the science, in terms of the research. I think we just keep finding out more. From the breath test for alcohol that used to be in England in the 60s to the 70s in India, they were having 70% accuracy, having dogs sniff human breath for cancer diagnosis, to now where we are today, understanding that we can find what parasites people have got. We can find what kind of kidney condition people have from their breath. We can find out when a heart attack is imminent from someone's breath. There's just so much more that we're discovering every day about the breath. And then, to me, what fascinates me most, and maybe you agree because you're a practitioner yourself, is actually in a world today where breathwork has become so commodified. It's a bit like yoga, it's waiting for its downfall. But there are stories out there already of practitioners who are misbehaving and things like that. But to treat breathwork simply as a peak experience or an opportunity to get out of the situation I'm in doesn't give it its true merit. I think for me, it's what happens in between the breath sessions that actually becomes more valuable than the peak experience itself. In other words, I see people fall in love with themselves more, they forgive themselves more, they become more compassionate with other people and with themselves. And these are all beautiful things. How can we raise the general bar rather than just have the peak reminder? Oh yeah, that's what it is. And then a day later we go kick a cat or whatever we step on a spider or whatever it is that we do. How can we actually raise the bar of our consciousness permanently rather than just count on the breath experience to give us a little glimpse of something different?
mm. And how do you think we make it a bit more integrated into our life?
It's interesting you say that because at Alchemy we use the conscious connected breath as a way to create a lot of impact for people, and I think that, and I was the first person to bring breathwork online back in 2010, and I think what happened as a result of that is that I bear some responsibility for the conscious connected breath in a way being what it is that people are after, the most life-changing, quickest way to change my perspective as possible. And it seems natural that it's become commodified as a result of that in a way. But I think the way breath is most life-changing is to just stop breathing for a moment, stop thinking, and just consider what each single breath means and what would it take to create intimacy with something that we've taken for granted our entire lives. Why is it that the only time we really remember our breath is when we don't have enough of it? It's always around a moment of loss or trauma or accident or damage. I mean, occasionally you see a beautiful sight, whatever that might be. I have to be careful what we say these days, but you see a beautiful sight that might take your breath away. There is that cliche as well. But most of the times we relate to the breath consciously because we lost it, not because we gained it. And so I think in many ways we're kind of looking through the wrong end of the telescope about this thing. We've got a reductionist state of mind, and we want to just have this pill in our pocket that we can take because that's what we've been taught as children, that our solutions come from the outer world. We don't reverse that. We don't become the solution. We search for solutions outside us. And I think when we create intimacy with the breath, if we stop for that moment and wipe the slate clean and start over as innocent, in innocent inquiry, if you will, then we're going to really discover the breath is much more powerful than we've ever given it credit for. And so, what I mean is, when someone says, "What do I do? I'm panicky or I've got anxiety," I usually say, "Well, practice breath patterns before when you're not anxious. Don't wait until you're anxious and then put them into practice." It's really, this is not a process to resolve things, it's a practice. And so if you can become conscious of 10% of the breaths you take every day, imagine how many breaths you've lost that you're beginning to stack up the other side of the scales. You're really beginning to restore your awareness of something powerful and beneficial for yourself.
So
Does that
like
make any
for
sense?
yeah, I think what I resonated with was in particular just like building a continual relationship with the breath. And it's not just in those alert moments of when you've got like high anxiety or high stress, when you start noticing you're like really
Yeah.
constricted and those kind of things. Because yeah, I found I'm a lot more when maybe the outside world shows a situation that might be perceived as a bit more stressful or anxious. When I'm working on my breath, I come like regularly, and it's part of my practice, being able to come back a lot more rather than maybe like 5, 6 years ago when I just kept running, finding like some breath work when I was in a really down state and I had to keep going and going and going. Yeah, it was a lot better when I had generated that good relationship of it already to help me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think half the remedy is is already accomplished by the choice to breathe, right?
Mm.
Like just by, okay, I'm under stress, I can't find my passport and I've got to get to the airport, kind of feeling like, and your mind starts, you start self-lobotomizing, right? Like, oh God, you keep opening the same drawer or you keep opening the same section of your suitcase, whatever it is, we begin to act like idiots. And then, are you going to take a breath? Are you going to stop and go, okay, just forget all that monkey mind stuff. I'm just going to sit here and take a few breaths. And then when you've taken enough, all of a sudden your choices return, your awareness returns, and oh yeah, I left it in the glove box in my car or whatever it was. The memory gets better, and our selection process improves. And I think that's part of the problem. We've learned to live in such a high adrenaline culture. I think one of the best analogies as an elder that I can use is I remember watching black and white movies, and where you see long lingering scenes for like 20 seconds on one scene, and the mind would like follow it and interpret and endow it with all kinds of different possibilities. But now there's a scene, sometimes scenes last a third of a second, so you've got so many visual stimuli that something something's got to pay for that. There's something in the quality of attention we can pay to life that is is suffering because we're so spoon-fed and we're so stimulated from the outer world that to find that still place that I mentioned earlier on becomes more and more remote. It's
Mm.
less easy.
Mm. Unless you train, unless you regularly, it becomes part of your life intentionally, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. No, I know, Anthony, you've also got your book. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And what's kind of the main purpose behind the book? Uh,
Yes. So out
Outer
of
Cat.
chaos, inner calm.
Mm.
Um, yeah. And what this book is about is actually how to not just translate or transform the outer chaos into a sense of inner calm, but then understand that it's that inner calm that can reinform the world around us. So we're not stuck being at the end of the tail of the dog, but we can become the dog itself, and we can actually create a difference in the world around us just because of who we are, not what we say or even what we do, but just from being authentically who we are. So there's a sense of, it starts with, of course, an ability to not over identify with the outer world and to begin to identify more with the inner world and the relationship between the two. And this is really the alchemy that I teach, is how can the outer world inform me? How can I compost all this data that I'm receiving or that is being thrown at me? How can I compost it into fertile soil from which newness, a sense of creativity, a sense of becoming the creator of my life can be born? And what does that process look like? And so the book is really a lot about identifying parts in our past, parts of our past that dominate us still, and learning how to move away from over identification with those and the kind of reactive coping systems that we created, and moving towards autonomy from those and rewriting old scripts, and then looking at our life from now onwards and saying, how do I put this into practice? What does it look like? What are the steps? So it's as if we live on a map, a roadmap, or a template, but we don't really know what it is. We're kind of just stumbling through our lives, and then at the end of our lives being in regret, right? This has been my experience talking with elders a lot and working with people who've been dying and being around hospices, understanding this sense of inevitable regret that grows for people as they go through life with the wastage and the hurt they've suffered, the hurt they've created, and it just stacks and stacks until we just try to get away from it. But we're a bit blindfolded, so wherever we go, we're going to find ourselves, right? So we keep trying to get away from ourselves. And this book is really about coming home and feeling not just the comfort of that and the resource of that, but also the resilience, the robustness, that I can be a candle that won't blow out in a strong wind, which is what I teach at my academy for my facilitators. I want them to be capable of being next to someone who's going through a life-changing experience, which might not always be positive. It might be really challenging to negotiate, but I want my facilitators to be up to the task. I don't want them to shy away because it's out of depth for them. So the book is really an introduction to the work that we do, and it uses the breath, and it's also based on the principle that emotional intelligence, what if we consider our emotional intelligence, our EQ, our ability to take a breath when we don't want to really take those moments in life that we forego our breath and we forego our presence and we forego the highest and best choice for the best outcome that we can create. And we actually take that breath and create the space and then create a pivotal moment ourselves. So I always try to describe this book differently every time. So I keep coming back at it from a different angle.
I love it. There's many different ways you could explore it and describe it. But yeah. So where can the listener find the book? Is it on? It's on Amazon.
It is on Amazon. It's coming out in a week, I think, on Amazon. And it's already getting its first reviews, which are all thankfully 5-star reviews. And it's also it's interesting for me because when I had what they call a galley copy for the last 6 months, which is something that you give out to people in order to get endorsements or, to friends to get feedback and so on. And I had the fortune to belong to a community called Intelligent Change, which is a lot of young people in their 20s to 35. And they're all change makers, that most of them are CEOs and founders and they've made their millions and they're kind of over that and looking at, well, how can I actually make a difference? So I've been fortunate enough to get endorsements from many of them as change makers, which has been great. And I'm actually over here in New York today. Tomorrow I'm filming with um, an American personality called Hoda Kotb, who used to run the Today Show on NBC with Jenna Bush, George Bush's daughter. And we're partnering with her on her app. She has an app called Joy 101. And so we're going to bring breathwork to several, I don't know, 50 or 100,000 people on this app, which is great news.
Oh, amazing. Plenty,
Yeah.
plenty of things going on getting this out to the world. I love it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
Anthony, so the listener can find your book on Amazon. Where else can they find you? And is there maybe a final point you want to leave us with today before we wrap up?
Yeah. You can find all about us on alchemyofbreath.com.
Hmm.
We also have a retreat center and community center in Tuscany. You can find out about that on asha.global. And that's an intriguing voyage. If you go there and have a look at that site, that's a pet project that we've got going in Italy. And you can breathe with us every Sunday. We do online breathworks in the morning and the evening, UK time. We have several hundred people breathing together, which is a lot of fun. And come closer. And I think my message would be, okay, there's a message and there's a request. The message is consider what that might mean, that one, taking a breath when you don't want to would be a measure of your emotional capability and your emotional intelligence. So next time that you're running short on choices, consider that you can take a breath and see what might happen as a result of that. And then my request would be to consider what a random act of kindness might be for you today, that you can do that for someone else without expecting anything.
I love that. Yeah, kindness, incorporating more of that into our lives. Love it. Thank you, Anthony. And yeah, definitely check out everything Anthony's got going on. Check out the book, and really like focusing on connecting more with your breath as well. So once again, Anthony, a massive thank you for coming on today. Thank you. So
Cheers.
that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.